Welcome everyone to Introducing Emotional Intelligence. My name is Regina Bryan. Now, this recording you're watching is of the exact same class that I just taught this past Saturday, February the 26th. And I just want to thank you for taking the time to watch it. I also want to thank Paul Martinelli and the entire Empowered Living team for partnering with me to bring this program forward. I am thrilled to have this opportunity to share with you information that has changed my life and I know could do the same for you. So today is not an exhaustive attempt to teach you all there is to know about emotional intelligence. Today is just the beginning. So with that in mind, a realistic goal for all of us today would be to first have an appreciation for what emotional intelligence is and an understanding of some of its core principles so that you can be more aware and more sensitive to it in your life. And number three, that you would have some level of dexterity after today's class with this material to begin to apply it in your everyday life and begin to get the benefit from having more than an average development of emotional intelligence. And for any of you that find this interesting, maybe it's something that you want to work on as your next level of personal growth, or perhaps you're a coach and a speaker and you want to bring this material to your clients. Well, before the end of the class today, I will share with you opportunities to continue to work with me and do just that. Now, as we get started today, I want to share with you one of my biggest and first lessons in emotional intelligence. When I was in my mid-20s, I was working at the Mental Health Resource Center in Jacksonville, Florida. You're probably all familiar with the book, Everything I Needed to Learn, I Learned in Kindergarten. Well, my book would be titled Everything I Needed to Learn, I Learned at Mental Health. I mean, it was a really great job. I loved my coworkers and the clients, and it was the perfect training ground for developing emotional intelligence, as most workplaces are. For over 7 years, I was the office manager there. I supervised 3 front office staff. I worked very closely with the therapist and the psychiatrist, and the head of the inpatient unit, a nurse named Linda. As we say in the South, bless her heart. She was just one of those people. How can I say this kindly? Linda was a glass half empty kind of person, if you know what I mean. Everything was a problem, and she didn't mind telling you. So on Monday mornings, usually before I could put my purse down, she was at my desk, and her opening line was always the same. Regina, we have a problem. I could feel the life draining from my body. You know, she would say it with a hand on her hip and let out this sigh. It was a whole thing. I was 25 years old at the time. She was a little older than my mom and dad, and I desperately wanted to show her some respect. This went on, and it wasn't just reserved for Mondays. A couple of different times during the week, she would come directly to my desk and present her problem. This continued for weeks, eventually months, and over the course of nearly a year of working with Linda, our interactions were starting to impact me. I wasn't quite the same person. I actually dreaded going to work. I was anxious anytime that I knew I was going to be speaking with Linda, and I knew something had to change. So one Monday, I decided to get to Linda before she could get to me. And I headed to the inpatient unit to see her in her office. Well, she was with a patient, so I waited in her office. While I was waiting, I noticed the family photos on her desk and books that she was reading. And when she walked in, I was ready for her. I started the conversation by simply asking, "Hey, Linda, how was your weekend?" "Good," she said. Well, that was a start. And then I said, "Tell me about the people in these photos. Are these your grandkids?" And she smiled. And that is absolutely how our relationship started to change. Now, show of hands, who's had a Linda in their life before? Yeah, we all have. And little in our lives prepare us for the Lindas that we encounter. You see, when you and I are quite young, we start school and we learn how to read and write and add and subtract. And that's exactly what we're supposed to learn. Then we learn things like European history, trigonometry, and astronomy. We were taught that getting good grades and going to college and getting a great job after college, that was the keys to success and happiness. And that isn't always the case. Actually, I loved going to school, and yet, if you're like me, you never did anything with that trigonometry or astronomy. And unless I'm watching Jeopardy, I am never asked about the Treaty of Versailles or the Russian Revolution. What I learned from my relationship with Linda is how we handle ourselves and others may be the most important things we ever learn. And the irony is, we're never really taught about them. And that's why emotional intelligence is critical. Let's look at Linda as it relates to emotional intelligence. If we gave her an assessment, she would have likely scored low in the social recognition and social management quotients. These two quotients measure how we relate to others and how we navigate those relationships. The sad thing is had Linda taken an assessment and sat down with someone who would have walked her through it, she might have been a nicer and happier person. Because these assessments give us information and strategies that we can implement. That's why these assessments are so powerful. You all know a Linda. You all have people in your lives and clients that probably need this type of assessment. And it's been my experience that when you work with individuals, teams, and families where there's a dysfunction, where there's a stone in the shoe kind of personality issues, having an assessment really makes it easy to have those sweaty palm conversations. People are less defensive. They're less on edge. They don't feel attacked because they're the ones that answered all the questions. You can see how powerful having this tool in your toolkit is. And you can see how powerful it is to have your own assessment. Because here's what I know. Linda didn't know. And like many of us, we just don't know because we can't see the picture when we're in our own frame. We just can't. And that's why everybody needs their own assessment. Just think back to if you've ever done a DISC or a strengths finder. Think about how revealing that was to you. Could you imagine going through the rest of your life not being aware of something this critically important to your success? And even if you believe that you're good at managing your behavior and relationships, what if you were just a little bit better? What if the assessment could provide information to you that would allow you to understand where your strengths are and where you may have opportunities for growth? That's exactly what it did for me. And here's the good news. Wherever you are today, at this very moment, is the perfect place to start because we can grow and improve. Emotional intelligence can be learned. Now, emotional intelligence is not about IQ. It's not about being happy and agreeable all the time. It isn't about sharing everything you feel with everyone you know. And it certainly isn't about avoiding or suppressing emotions. So what is emotional intelligence? Emotional intelligence is the practice of recognizing and understanding one's own emotions and the emotions of others, and using that awareness to effectively manage one's behavior and relationships. At a high level, it's a practical set of skills that any of us can learn to manage our emotions such that they work for us, not against us. You see, as humans, we are very emotional creatures, and all of our emotions, every single one of them, are signals. Think of a time that you were able to use your emotions in a positive way. Maybe it was to reach a goal or get a relationship back on track. Remember how great that felt? Now, I bet you can also think of a time when your emotions got the best of you. Maybe you said something or did something that you later regretted. Increasing your EQ will make a positive difference in your life and the lives of those around you. So the outcome of our time together today, and really any work that we do in emotional intelligence as we go forward, is to lead ourselves better, such that we are living the lives that we were created to. Actually, that outcome is what I want our working definition of emotional intelligence to capture. So I slightly tweaked the definition I just gave you, and here's where I landed. Emotional intelligence is the practice of recognizing and understanding one's own emotions and the emotions of others, and using that awareness to bring out the best in oneself and those around you. Now, isn't that what we're all looking for? I mean, isn't that why you're here today? To bring out the best in yourself and those around you? Of course. Here's the thing. From the time we wake up until the time we go to sleep, you and I experience hundreds of emotions, and we're either managing them or we're at the mercy of them. Make no mistake, your EQ is always showing. And if we want to improve ourselves, and who doesn't, then let's start with emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a dynamic process. It is not a one and done scenario. You're not finished after today's class. It is a lifelong and dynamic process of understanding what you feel and why, knowing your triggers and hot buttons, using emotions to pursue goals, and learning how to navigate the emotions of others. And that is just the tip of the iceberg. If you're a coach and speaker, I want to talk directly to you for just a moment. You have clients that are in various stages of growth and self-discovery, right? Imagine your clients being able to use their emotions in such a way that it would allow them to get what they want out of life. And you get to be the person that guides them through it. Now, before we continue to move forward, I want to share with you some compelling information on global trends in EQ. I think you're going to find this fascinating. And if you're still wondering why EQ matters, this will answer that. It's from the State of the Heart 2021 Trends in EQ report. Now, this database has been around since 2011, and it is actually the largest EQ study on the planet. And I just want to highlight a couple of things for us. Since 2011, global EQ scores have declined by almost 5%. Now, 2017 through 2018 actually saw scores rebound. And then guess what happened in 2020? Yep, scores dropped by almost 2%. And the three skills that took the biggest hit in this pandemic were imagination, risk tolerance, and collaboration. Now, when I think about my business as a coach and as a speaker and marketing myself out into the world, these are the three skills I know I need. And when you think about it, everyone needs these skills. And for all of you that are future-minded, and who isn't, my goodness, this is from the World Economic Forum. They published their Future of Work report, and 8 of the top 10 skills needed for work in 2025, which, by the way, is just 3 years away, are in emotional intelligence. It's pretty clear that the world now faces an emotional crisis. From the pandemic to politics, it seems as though we are more divided and disconnected than ever. The need for EQ is real and right in front of us. Now, in addition to the assessments, another piece of this program will be a 3-hour workshop. And it's going to give us the opportunity to dig much deeper into all of this. However, today we will take a sneak peek of the emotional intelligence framework that will be our roadmap for this program. Now, this is not the only model of EQ. There are dozens of variations, and most of them are quite similar to this one in that they address both the self and social sides of EQ. As I guide you through the model, I want you to think about someone important in your life, someone that's in your close circle, a family member, a friend, maybe someone you work with. And perhaps there's been some tension in that relationship, some static. Just think about that person and that relationship. Also, think about yourself. Think about a situation where something's happened and maybe you have felt off emotionally. You were in struggle. As we go through this, see if you can find yourself or that other person in this. So here is our model for EQ. These are the 4 EQ quotients: self-recognition, self-management, social recognition, and social management. Now, again, for those of you that are future thinkers, really wanting to position yourself for success, then you are definitely going to want to be at this upcoming workshop where we're going to unpack and understand how to strengthen ourselves in each of these 4 quotients, beginning with self-recognition. Self-recognition is also referred to as self-awareness in some of the models. It is the foundation of emotional intelligence. We can't practice managing ourselves better, relating well to others, or successfully navigating relationships without it. By the way, the value placed on knowing oneself goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, when they gave us what is arguably the most powerful and famous advice in history: know thyself. Self-recognition reflects your personal psychology, including knowing your strengths and opportunities for growth, having a healthy self-appreciation, creating appropriate boundaries, identifying the cause and effect of emotions, and at the cornerstone of it all, self-awareness. Years ago, I came across what I believe to be the best definition ever for self-awareness, and I want to share it with you now. Self-awareness is the ability to see ourselves clearly, understand who we are, how others see us, and how we fit into the world. Now, that may sound a little daunting, and perhaps it is. However, self-awareness is the lead domino in creating the life and relationships we all want. All transformation begins with self-awareness. And because we interact with others, we need to be aware of how we come across to them. If you want to be a better mother, father, leader, coach, or speaker, or anything else, it all begins with a greater sense of self-awareness. Self-awareness is at the core of advancement. Now, studies show that self-aware people are more confident, they're strong communicators, better at work, have better relationships. Now, do we really need a study to tell us this? But how do we do this? How do we increase self-awareness? Statistics show that 95% of people believe they know themselves well, when in truth, and please don't shoot the messenger, only about 10 to 15% of people do. That's pretty shocking, right? And in a group like this, it may even be hard for you to believe. It may be hard for you to believe that people around you in this type of personal growth setting may not know themselves as well as they think they do. Well, if you're like me and you had a really hard time wrapping your mind around this information that only 10 to 15% of people really know themselves, think about it like this. Where in your life do you feel a lack of self-control or undisciplined? Think about the goals you've been working on or towards for a while, and you can't quite seem to get there. What's holding you back? Have you set boundaries and standards and yet rarely live by them? Do you have a hard time recognizing what you feel and why? Those questions likely reveal some gaps between where you are and where you want to be. And those gaps just might be the evidence that maybe, just maybe, you don't know yourself as well as you think you do. So the very first step in building greater self-awareness is in our own mindset. And one way to actually begin closing that gap is something you can do today: journaling. And if you speak to anyone that has been journaling for a while, they will tell you the deep sense of awareness and reflection that journaling provides. Nothing, and I mean absolutely nothing, introduces you to yourself like journaling. And if you've been a part of the Empowered Living community for a while, then there's no doubt you're probably familiar with Paul's Authentic Journaling course. Now, I know what you might be thinking at this point. I didn't come here to this class today to talk about journaling. Really? That's your best strategy? Yep, it most certainly is. And I think that we're quick to dismiss ideas when they're too simple. And this is one of those simple things that actually works. And here's another idea. One more thing to add to your list of things that you can begin doing today to cultivate a greater sense of self-awareness is to start asking yourself really good questions and lean into the answers. I'm going to share with you right now one of my favorite questions. You're absolutely going to love this. I hope you're ready. Here it is. What do people get when they get you? That is so good, isn't it? This question has haunted me since the moment I heard it. One day I was just working at my desk and I had the TV on in the background. And all of a sudden I hear Bishop T.D. Jakes ask this jaw-dropping, thought-provoking question as only he can, in that signature booming voice, as though God himself is asking you. It stopped me dead in my tracks. So, what do people get? If you and I were hanging out having a cup of coffee or a cocktail, and I asked you this question, how would you respond? When you show up at work, in the Zoom room, the grocery store, the networking event, or even at home, what do people get? I recently asked a coaching client of mine this question, and after a minute or so, she repeated it back. And then she added this: what do I want people to get? That is exactly what we're looking to do in emotional intelligence. That's exactly why you have to come to the workshop on March 19th and spend some time thinking into who you want to be. And take an assessment and going to the workshop are really going to help you begin to close that gap. And again, if you are a speaker and a coach, having the license, the certification to teach this course is how you're going to be able to help others close that gap. EQ is the perfect supplement to whatever material that you're using in your current coaching practice or as a speaker. Asking the question, what do people get when they get you, is designed to cultivate awareness about where you are now. Now, there are plenty of other questions and exercises that we're going to get into at the workshop that are going to help you dig deep and not just discover how you see you, really help you discover how others see you. Now, one of the goals for today's class is for this to have standalone value. If you're taking the time to watch this recording, I really want you to get the most out of it. So for that, with that in mind, you should have received an EQ action plan in an email that I sent out the morning of this class. And we're going to take a look at this right now. On this action plan, again, if you want to get the most out of your time here today, you really want to look at this closely. You're going to spend some time identifying 3 strengths, identify 3 areas for growth, and list the top 3 emotions that you feel on a regular basis. Knowing who we are and how our emotions impact ourselves and others is foundational to raising our EQ. Knowing ourselves is also quite essential as to how we're going to show up in our day-to-day life. And so this leads us right into the second quotient, self-management. Self-management is the ability to use your awareness, emotions, inner resources to appropriately manage behavior and achieve objectives. Now, self-management is the ultimate you and you deal. And because it's completely up to each one of us how we will respond and create life. Each day presents us with scenarios, and our emotions will either work for us or against us as we navigate all the situations that we're going to encounter. Think about a recent scenario where you had a pretty strong reaction. Perhaps afterwards you were filled with regret and wish you had taken a moment to respond instead. Maybe you were driving and someone cut you off in traffic. How did you react? Did you lay on the horn for a couple of minutes? Did you shout at them even though they likely couldn't hear you because you were in your car? Or did you begin riding the back of their car just a little too closely? Or did you pause and respond by choosing to do nothing? Okay, well, maybe recently you were in line at the grocery store or at another type of customer service counter, and the person you were dealing with just had a bad attitude or just plain rude. How did you react? Did you give it right back to them? Or did you respond by biting your tongue? Because these events happen in the blink of an eye, it's easy for us to feel as though we have no control over them. So let's take a moment just to think about why we feel so out of control when these things happen. When you and I experience tense emotions and overreact, we are experiencing what is known as an amygdala hijacked. Now, the amygdala is a cluster of almond-shaped cells located near the base of the brain, and they help define and regulate emotion. They also help preserve memories and attach emotion to our memories. Now, the intention of the amygdala is to protect us from danger. If it perceives a threat, it'll make a split-second decision to initiate the fight or flight response. Now, this was useful to our ancestors because they regularly experienced very real physical threats. Today, the fight or flight response is more likely triggered by psychological threats, the stresses of modern day life. For example, someone cutting you off in your car or someone being rude to you. In those moments, strong emotions such as anger, fear, and anxiety are present, and our prefrontal cortex is deactivated and overruled by the amygdala, causing us to overreact. The key to preventing these amygdala hijacks is to strengthen our emotional intelligence. And that is one of the big takeaways from this class today, is strengthening our emotional intelligence to prevent these types of amygdala hijacks. Here's how we best do that. Stop handing over your power to other people, to conditions and circumstances outside of yourself. We so easily hand the power away from ourselves when the power resides in us. How we choose and how we respond to whatever life hands us is within us. That's self-management. I think Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl said it best when he said, between stimulus and response lies a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. The more we use this space between stimulus and response, the better we can align who we are with who we want to be and our actions. Now, besides reacting to what life gives us, self-management is also about creating your life. Earlier, I asked about your goals, particularly goals you've been working on for a while. And I asked, what's holding you back? What's really holding you back? Many of us will make the logical case for why we haven't reached our goals. Just listen closely to what you're saying. The reasons, and we may not be aware of this, are typically emotional. You know, for me, one of the goals I had most of my life was to learn to play the piano. I became aware of this desire very early in my life, at least by age 10 or so. And at that time, I would tell myself that when I became an adult, when I was older, that I would buy myself a piano and that I would get lessons. Well, I was actually 38 years old when I took my very first piano lesson. And listen, I had a lot of great reasons why it took me that long to take piano lessons. I had a lot of good logical reasons. Where would I find the time? I really don't have the money to invest in a piano. And I would also tell myself, why does it even matter now? I mean, at this age, what is it? Why now? I kept telling myself many different things as to why I hadn't started playing the piano. What are the things that you've always wanted to do? Maybe write the great American novel, learn a foreign language, maybe play an instrument. What about your day-to-day goals? Going to the gym, writing in your journal, making time for recreation. What's holding you back? I'm guessing you're making the very same logical case for why you haven't reached your goals that I was making. I'm also guessing that your reasons, like mine, are emotional. You see, people with high emotional intelligence use their emotions to create the life they desire. Let's also take a moment to look at your EQ action plan. Now, for the self-management quadrant, here's what you're going to look at. Identify the last thing you overreacted to and why. List 3 goals that you have right now and the 3 things that are holding you back. For those of you coming to the workshop, and that should be all of you, you're going to want to bring your EQ action plan with you. Okay, now we're going to shift over from the self side of emotional intelligence to the social side, to the side that involves others. And we're going to take a look at both the social recognition and social management quadrants. Social recognition reflects our awareness of the emotions and responses of others. And social management is our ability to use our interpersonal skills effectively to manage those relationships. In other words, to bring out the best in others. In Jim Carrey's 2014 commencement speech, he said something so powerful about relationships. It just blew me away. He said, "The effect you have on others is the most valuable currency there is." That is so good and so true. People who possess a high level of emotional intelligence distinguish themselves from others. They're the people that catch our attention because they capture our hearts. We gravitate towards people with this kind of energy. They're seen as leaders and influencers. Polishing your people skills allows you to shine. Social recognition and management quotients are the real test of emotional intelligence. Because ladies and gentlemen, this is where the rubber meets the road. Because unless you live in a cave or on a deserted island, your life will intersect with the lives of others. A few years ago, when I was initially DISC certified, our instructor said something at the beginning of our training that I will never forget. He said, "Our greatest source of joy, happiness, and love is found in our relationships. And our greatest source of pain, sorrow, and frustration are also found in our relationships." Isn't that the truth? I mean, raise your hand that you just know that you know that that's the truth, right? Because by now we all know The quality of our lives is in direct proportion to the quality of our relationships. You could probably name some people right now, one or two, that you have amazing relationships with without even thinking about it. I also imagine that you could name one or two people right now that you have less than ideal relationships with, perhaps even challenging, without even having to think about it. No one with bad relationships raves about having a great life, and no one with deep, meaningful relationships complains about having a bad one. Relationships are a definite measure of quality of life. Every time you and I interact with others, we participate in what's known as the emotional economy. And for better or worse, every interaction, every single one impacts us. This is the currency that Jim Carrey was referring to. Let's break this down a little bit so that we can understand it. Our interactions are so impactful and so powerful because of something called emotional contagion. And you may be unfamiliar with this term, but I promise you, you've experienced it. Emotional contagion runs on what is known as the brain's low road. Now, this road operates effortlessly at lightning speed beneath our awareness. We immediately feel what's happening. When you have a knee-jerk reaction, that's low road living. Of course, this runs contrary to the brain's high road. The high road works with deliberate effort. When we take the high road, we are using our awareness and self-control, allowing ourselves to think prior to responding. So in all of our interactions, the call to action really is simply, do you want to live on the low road, or do you want to take the high road? And the low road isn't completely all negative. And we're going to get into more of this in the workshop. There are moments where the low road is positive. Have I mentioned the workshop? Because you really, really have to be there. Let's go back to my story about Linda. She was constantly negative, and I was catching all of her emotions. You know, I had all the symptoms. I dreaded going to work. I was anxious just anytime I thought I might have to speak with her. You see, overall, I'm a happy-go-lucky kind of person, and that was changing as a result of my interactions with Linda. By the way, that's emotional contagion. Since March of 2020, we have all been focused on limiting the spread of the coronavirus, and rightfully so. Now, how much time do you spend limiting the negative and toxic people that are around you? Even when someone's energy is more subtle, unlike Linda's, we still pick up on it, right? We have all met people, and within moments, we could feel their energy. You felt it. You met someone and instantly liked them. You clicked with them, and you thought, wow, I don't know why, but I really like this person. Now, we've all had the opposite happen. Haven't you met someone and thought, I don't know why, I just don't like this person. Something feels off. They're not right. I got a bad vibe. So whether it's blatant like Linda's or more subtle, we pick up on energy. And that is why emotions are so contagious. Now, I'm sure you have. We've all had this experience. We've watched someone just totally lose it. Unfortunately, maybe that's been us. And I'm certain that we've been on the other side of it. Whenever someone does that, when someone loses it, they dump their toxic and negative energy on us. When that happens, they activate the same circuitry in our brain for those same emotions. That's why our knee-jerk reaction when someone is mean or rude to us is to give it right back. I mean, think about that. The next time that someone is just really being mean or have a bad attitude, just think, their emotions coming at you are activating those same emotions inside of you. Now, that being said, the opposite is true. Emotional contagion can work both ways. Positive and uplifting emotions are just as contagious. That's why when I decided to bring positive emotions to my relationship with Linda, over time, it worked. It's a little unreal and it's exciting just how much power we actually have to change the mood of another person and they ours. Do you want to hear something, really cool? These interactions that you and I have, they play a role in also reshaping our brains through something called neuroplasticity. This is completely incredible. It's just a fancy word that means our repeated experiences can mold certain neural circuitry. This is incredible. Over time, our relationships, be they positive and wonderful or completely toxic, can reshape our brains. Doesn't that just blow you away? This understanding alone should radically change the way that you view and do relationships. I know it has for me. Psychologist Edward Thorndike in the 1920s gave us what I think is the second most powerful advice in history when he said, "It is to our advantage to act wisely in human relationships." Oh my gosh, is it ever? It takes presence and awareness for us to effectively deal with others in a way that brings out the best in them and us. It takes emotional intelligence. About now, you might be thinking, this just isn't me. I don't have that kind of power. Other people may have it, but not me. And I'm here to tell you that you absolutely do have it. Or maybe you're thinking, Regina, you're describing me. I know all of this. And if that's where you are, fantastic. Keep in mind, it takes effort and diligence to maintain a high EQ. We never arrive completely, and unexpected life events can change everything in an instant. Remember, 2020 saw a 2% drop in global EQ scores. We in our relationships are evolving all the time, and what got us there, what got us in certain relationships, may not be enough to keep us there. One of the very best examples of relationships that I can draw from is marriage. Everybody was head over heels when they first got married, right? And statistics show that more times than not, those relationships end. Some of you have heard me talk about my husband before, and maybe you've even met him. I truly believe that he is the kindest, sweetest, and most supportive person on the planet. We're both people of faith, we're optimists, and we love and enjoy life. And as great as that all is, it is not a guarantee for success. Almost 15 years in, I know that it takes hard work, commitment, and love. Now, reflecting back on our early days of marriage, I believe that we suffered from something called toxic positivity. Now, you probably have experienced this, if not in your relationships, not in your marriage, and some other relationships. It's the belief that people should put a positive spin on all experiences and exude positive emotions and thoughts at all times, particularly when things are difficult. It can silence negative emotions and make people feel under pressure to pretend to be happy even when they are struggling. Now, many of us have been unwittingly guilty of this. It usually happens because we don't know what to say or what to do when someone is hurting. The intention is not to cause harm. However, it does because toxic positivity comes across as a lack of empathy. And empathy is one of those skills that we're going to explore in this upcoming workshop on March 19th, because it is fundamental for the success of our relationships. Here's an example. My husband, Roger, would come home and he would tell me about something that went wrong at work or something that he was feeling bad about. And in my attempt to make him feel better, I would say something like, well, that's not such a big deal. Well, that's so minor. Don't even worry about it. What I was doing unintentionally was shutting him down. I didn't want to feel the discomfort of what he was saying because I didn't know how to help him. I couldn't fix it. I was dismissing him basically. He wasn't allowed to express his authentic emotions, and I was making it all about me. Toxic positivity can show up in some really interesting ways. Have you ever been told, "Oh, don't cry"? Most of us have. Why do we say this to people? Well, we say it because we're uncomfortable. I've been on both sides of it. Many of us have. I have said it, and I've had it said to me. A few years ago, I actually saw this play out in real time. Why the words "don't cry" are so incredibly toxic. So a few years ago at our Keller Williams conference, after a very long day, a group of us decided we'd go out for dinner. And one of the friends in our group, we'll call her Ruth, earlier that day, she had run into another agent, someone that she was incredibly close with once upon a time, and they had a falling out. So as she's talking to us about this at dinner, she gets sad. This triggered a lot of heartache and a lot of sad emotions for her. And as she's expressing this to the table, right on cue, some of the friends jump in with "don't cry." Now, I have to say the women were a little kinder and gentler, saying, "Oh, don't cry, it's not worth it. Let's have a good time tonight." The guys were a bit more heavy-handed. They were saying things like, "Why are you crying? This doesn't make any sense. Let's just have fun." As I was watching all this play out, it really hit me. This is completely dysfunctional. This time it was clear to me exactly what was happening. Our group was clearly uncomfortable that Ruth was expressing these emotions because they didn't know what to do. We didn't know how to handle it, so we dismissed her. That caused Ruth to feel disconnected, as if she and her emotions just didn't matter. And when you start to think about this, doesn't it make sense? And it's so easy to do with children, isn't it? We say things like, "You're okay, it's no big deal, stop crying." Now, yes, there's a place for that. Just be very careful before dismissing any child or adult, for that matters, emotions. For social recognition and social management, let's look back at the EQ action plan. So for this piece, you're going to identify 3 people that you have a great relationship with. You're going to identify 3 other people that you have a challenging relationship with. And for number 3, you're going to think into what, if anything, is holding you back from having better relationships. Now listen, this EQ action plan is for you. Because you have taken the time to tune in and listen in and be a part of the class and or this recording, I really would love for you to get some standalone value. Now, we don't have time to get into it today. However, at the workshop, you're coming to the workshop, right? We're going to cover everybody's favorite topic in all of this, social media. Now, this piece of the workshop alone is why you cannot miss this workshop, because you've seen the post. You've seen the friend that overshares and lets it all hang out. You've seen the politically divisive post or the post where people are attacking each other. If there's one place I believe that we are losing our EQ footing, it's on social media. Now, for better or worse, social media is part of our lives. It's as big of a part of our lives as seeing people face to face or texting or emailing, talking on the phone. When it comes to increasing emotional and social intelligence, for social media, we have a lot to talk about. And we're going to cover all this in our deep dive workshop. Think of emotional intelligence as what it really is: the rules of engagement. The rules of creating conversations that connect and that bring out the best in ourselves and others. It is my hope that you have found value in what I've shared today. I'm sure that there's one little takeaway, one little nugget, maybe a new perspective has shifted for you in all this today. And that right there was worth the time that you took to listen into this recording. And now I want to share with you some next steps. So the first thing is the EQ project assessment. If you do just one thing as a follow-up to today's class, I highly, highly recommend that you get the EQ project assessment. This assessment is going to measure your scores in those 4 quotients of self-management, self-recognition, social recognition, and social management. And it's going to give you an idea of where you stand today. Now, again, many of you have taken a DISC assessment or a strengths finder, and I don't know about you, but the information I got from those type of assessments have made a difference in my life. And since I've taken also this assessment, this EQ assessment, this information has also made a huge difference in my life. You are going to want to take this assessment. Now, I actually recommend this for every single person that took the class on Saturday, or if you're listening and watching this recording. This is option 2. The EQ Experience Workshop and Assessment. This is where we're going to take a deep dive into many of the things that I've shared with you today. We're going to look at those 4 quadrants, and we're going to talk about practical, actionable steps that you can take to boost your EQ in those areas. You know, our emotions are the biggest part of what makes us human. And if we could get just a little bit better in managing them, why wouldn't we want that? And for those of you that are coaches and speakers, you are going to want the all-in package. Okay, this is really what you need to do if you're a coach and a speaker. And even if you're not, you're going to want this for your workplace or for the school or for the church small group. With the all-in package, you're going to get certification as an EQ specialist and coach. You're going to have the license to teach today's class, the PowerPoint, the transcripts. You're going to get to participate in the 3-hour deep dive EQ course. You're going to get the license to teach that course along with all the collateral, the transcript, the PowerPoint. You're going to get marketing assets, promotional emails, social media copy, thumbnail images, and monthly group calls led by me. And there are going to be some exciting bonuses that we're going to be posting. So if any of this, so this option in particular interests you, this right now for a limited time is $4.99. So let's review for just a minute. Option 1 is the assessment only. That's $99. Option 2 is the assessment and coming to the deep dive 3-hour workshop on March 19th. That is $199. However, if you are a coach and you are a speaker, you absolutely need this in your portfolio of services. And you are going to get an entire package of items, all with the direct goal of helping you bring emotional intelligence to your clients or to just your inner circle. Maybe you want to take this back to your church or to your workplace. We're going to help you do that. And that I'm all in package is $4.99. We've got the links posted in this chat. And I just want to thank you all for being here today. And I hope you make the decision to come and join us at the workshop. It has been my pleasure to share with you this afternoon. Take care, and we will see you very soon. Bye-bye.